Hello, my dears. Today we are going to be talking about Chapter 7, right after the American Revolution and what happened afterwards. After the American Revolution and America won their independence, they then had to figure out what to do next. They're going to be their own country, they need their own government, and how are they going to survive as an independent nation, no longer with Great Britain helping them in any way, shape, or form. So the first form of government they created was the Articles of Confederation. Sorry, I have my notes so I can reference them. The Articles of Confederation only had one branch of government, and this branch of government was the legislative branch, their Congress. One of the problems with only having one branch is that they have all the power, nobody to check and balance them out at all. All states had one vote, and there were 9 states had to approve something in order for it to get passed. The problem with the Articles of Confederation, the major problem, is it's going to give the states more power than the central government. So the national government has no power over the whole entire nation, making it weaker and not as strong as it needs to be. The national government could only ask states for money. They could only ask the states for people to serve in the military. So there was no protection, no money coming in, and it was really making the national government weak and not as strong as need be. Next page. If they wanted to change something in the government, in the Articles of Confederation, all 13 states had to approve, which was problematic because getting everybody to agree on something is very rare because each state has its own wants and needs. The U.S. was also in a lot of money problems, and like we just said, the national government could only ask the states for money, and they did not have to pay like a federal tax. And this is a problem because the U.S. is in debt from war, and they need to repay that back. And then they just started printing paper money, these continentals, and they weren't backed by gold or silver. So it'd be like me handing you a piece of computer paper asking to buy your cell phone from you. You don't want that piece of computer paper. That's not worth anything to you. And that's what their continentals were. They weren't worth anything. So the U.S. is in some problems with a weak government under the Articles of Confederation, and they need a change. Shays' Rebellion is one of the things that shows the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation. Shays' Rebellion took place in Massachusetts. There was a depression and money shortage, and it left farmers with fewer markets for their goods and no money to pay their debt. So they had no place to sell anything that they were growing, they weren't making any money, and they couldn't pay off any debts they had from a loan. So in Massachusetts, the merchants controlled the legislature, and they imposed heavy taxes on land to help states' war debt. Now here's the problem with that. In Massachusetts, the legislature is only merchants. People in Congress are merchants. They're not farmers. So when they go to make laws, they're only looking to make laws that are going to help the merchants. They don't care about the farmers because they're not a farmer, so who cares? Well, these farmers claimed no taxation without representation because they were being taxed so heavily they weren't being able to make any money. So they claimed no taxation without representation, and they had a rebellion. Shays' Rebellion really raised doubts that the national government was going to be able to put down a rebellion, or would they be able to use force and protect the people and the nation. And this really made the country question the strength of the Articles of Confederation because they were a weak government. So, in following Shays' Rebellion, the Constitutional Convention is called. This Constitutional Convention, their goal was to revise the Articles of Confederation. They weren't looking to create a whole new government. They were just looking to revise. So 55 delegates met once again in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Benjamin Franklin was there, and he was the oldest delegate. And you also have James Madison, who becomes known as the father of the Constitution because he took awesome notes, like you should be doing right now. Where am I? Okay, so at the Constitutional Convention, they need a new plan. They start talking about the Articles of Confederation, and they just realize they stink. So they say there's no point in revising this because they're that awful. So we might as well make a whole new form of government. And that's what they start to set out to do. Two plans come up during this time period, the Virginia plan and the New Jersey plan. Giddy up, whoop, whoop, go Jersey. But the Virginia plan said that they're going to have a bicameral legislature, which means two-house Congress, and representation is going to be done completely by population. That's awesome for the large states because they will have the most representation in Congress. But it's really going to hurt the smaller states, and their voices are going to be unheard, and they're going to be outnumbered, and they're not going to have a fair say in what's happening in the government. My hand just looked huge over here. So after the Virginia plan's created, they decide to suggest the New Jersey plan. And this New Jersey plan was a House legislator, and it was one vote per state. Now, that sounds awfully similar to the Articles of Confederation, and they said that's not going to work either because that's not fair, and that was unsuccessful for us in the Articles of Confederation. So let's, create a compromise. This compromise is what we have today, our two-house legislature. We have the House of Representatives, where representation is done by population, and then you have the Senate, where it's 2 votes per state regardless of population, making both sides very happy. Moving on. While creating and writing the Constitution, don't forget their goal is going to be to create a strong national government while protecting states' rights. And they're going to do this through various amendments, and they're also going to make sure that there are powers that are reserved for the states, and then powers that only the federal government can have. Where are we going next? Okay. In order to ratify the Constitution and for it to become law of the land, 9 states had to ratify it. Supporters of the Constitution become known as Federalists. They support that strong federal government. Some examples of a Federalist are James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay. They even started writing the Federalist Papers to get their point across. People who were unhappy with the Constitution were known as Anti-Federalists. 2 major Anti-Federalists are George Mason and Patrick Henry. They felt a really strong central government is going to weaken the states and the individual voices so much that they're not going to be heard anymore. They also were really worried about a president, thinking that he, or now she, would start to resemble more of a king, and they wanted to make sure that didn't happen. One of the major arguments with the Anti-Federalists was that there was nothing to protect individual rights, and that needed to be resolved before, please hold, before it got ratified. That's what I was looking. Sorry. So, in order for the Constitution to get ratified, they added the Bill of Rights, which are our first 10 amendments, giving us our personal freedoms and our personal liberties. So the Constitution gets ratified, it becomes law of the land. The end. Goodbye. Still recording.